Hello and welcome to Redacted Tonight VIP. I'm Lee Camp. Today we dig into where the United States will attack next. As you know, the American empire is always hungry for war, or at the very least, killing thousands of people with economic war, you know, if we can't get the guns and bombs in there. But too often, all of us who support peace simply react after the U.S. has bombed or invaded or attacked. So that's why it's important we get ahead of the game and look at who the U.S. will attack in the future. Independent journalist Ann Garrison has done some great work on the answer to that question, and I have her on the show today. And as always, we have Naomi Caravani with the Weekly Offensive. But first, here's my conversation with Ann Garrison. Hi, Ann. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi. Long live Ethiopia. U.S. out of Africa.
Yes, well...
I picked this up at a demonstration.
Yeah.
Good. I picked this up at a diaspora demonstration about this.
Yeah, well, yeah. So you're jumping to the meat of the matter, which is that we want to talk about Ethiopia because the U.S., you know, now the U.S. empire is involved in an endless array of wars and attacks on one form or another on various places around the globe, and so everyone's wondering where are they aiming their guns next at the Pentagon. And you've done some really interesting reporting on how the U.S. is aiming more and more at Ethiopia, but almost no one really is talking about it. So I want to get into that, but let's back up a little, and if you can tell us about the civil war that's been going on in Ethiopia.
During the first week of November, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a group of thugs that the U.S. backed for 27 years when they were in power. They're a 6% minority. Tigrayans are a 6% minority. And keep in mind, we're not talking about the Tigrayan people. We're talking about the Tplf. This group that was in power for 27 years with U.S. support, and which allowed, therefore, the U.S. to use it as its army in Africa. They had retreated to their province after they lost power because of a popular uprising in 2018, or a series of them. And last November, they attacked a federal army base in their province. This is very important to understand because in no time, the Western press stopped acknowledging that the TPLF attacked a federal army base. I mean, right. Is there any nation on earth that would not react to an attack on a federal army base?
Right.
So Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the Ethiopian Defense Force went into Tigray. But the Western press all started saying that Abiy Ahmed had started the war. I mean, this became so relentless that at one point I was having a little trouble with reality. I had to go back and look at the evidence. And yesterday I even asked Obang Metho, whom I was talking to from Gambela, Ethiopia, can you confirm that the TPLF attacked this federal army base and thereby started the war, the civil war? And he said, yes, he hadn't even gotten this from the government. He knew a young soldier there who survived. Ever since, the Western press and most U.S. officials have been blaming it on Ethiopia and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And they've also been portraying the TPLF and the Tigrayans as victims of this war, allegedly started by Abiy Ahmed, but started by the TPLF. There's just been a barrage of what I call atrocity reporting. It's very recognizable. As soon as the U.S. wants to attack another country, it starts these cries about genocide, war crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity. Those are all international crimes. I don't think any of them have any statute of limitations. And according to the UN Charter, if such heinous crimes are being committed, and if the UN determines that, the UN Security Council determines that they rise to the level that justifies some sort of intervention, particularly if one country has attacked another, then the UN Security Council is supposed to organize a response, a multilateral response.
Right.
But the U.S. hasn't been having any luck with this. It really didn't have any luck in Iraq. The 5 permanent members, including Russia and China, voted to create this no-fly zone over Libya in 2011, but they didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, I was just going to say, so it's increasingly seeming like the U.S. is laying kind of this groundwork that often we see before the U.S. decides to either invade or launch economic war, at least at a country. And so they seem to be doing that against Ethiopia, which is the second most populous country in Africa, 112 million people there. It lays at the center of this kind of geostrategically critical Horn of Africa. Can you talk a little about why the U.S. is interested specifically in Ethiopia?
Well, for one, they lost their puppet, the Tplf, in, I think it was 2015. The Tplf, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, which dominated the government, sort of a junta from a 6% minority, they lost their puppet. And that was upsetting. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, negotiated peace with Eritrea, the neighboring country, which is on the Red Sea, which Ethiopia had been at war with for many years. And for that, he won the Nobel Prize. Mm-hmm. Now, after this civil war started and all this barrage of atrocity reporting came at us, people, including even Democracy Now!, started saying, oh, what happened to this Nobel Prize winner? He's now at war. He's now committing, he and his army are committing all these international crimes in Tigray. But as I said, again, what nation would tolerate an attack on a federal army base? And the Undersecretary of State for African Affairs was outraged, and he compared it to the Confederates attacking Fort Sumter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then the Tigrayans fired on Eritrea. They fired rockets all the way to Asmara, the capital. And so Eritrea was drawn in. And then the atrocity reporting was aimed at blaming Eritrea, even though they started firing rockets at Eritrea.
Another piece of this with Eritrea is that AFRICOM, which I think a lot of viewers probably have heard of, the U.S. African Command. There's bases or the command bases in Djibouti, which neighbors Eritrea, and Eritrea has refused to allow Western powers to have a presence in their country. They're one of the only ones to do that. So is it true that the U.S. maybe is afraid of peace that the peace between them and Ethiopia will cause an aversion to AFRICOM for Ethiopia as well?
Exactly. I have been asking, and I asked Obang Metho yesterday. That I was talking to Obang Metho. He's in Gambela, Ethiopia right now, and he's the executive director of an organization called Solidarity for New Ethiopia. I asked him whether he thought Abiy Ahmed would make the Ethiopian army available for U.S. exploits in Africa. And he gave me a very diplomatic answer to the effect that the U.S. and Ethiopia should collaborate for everyone's benefit. People who he has an office in Washington, and he's back and forth between Washington and Ethiopia because Washington has so much power there, so he has to talk to officials and NGOs. And people who do that are very diplomatic.
We have to go to a quick break, but don't forget to grab every episode for free at Portable.tv and join our free email list by texting the word redacted to 33777. I'll be right back with a lot more.
Those in command of toxic systems designed to keep us confused, distracted, and afraid.
Are no match for an awakened mind.
They lie you into war.
They lie you into poverty.
They tell you what to think.
They're watching you. Are you watching them?
Are you watching the Hawks? Watch now on Portable TV.
I've seen the horrors that arise when money and evil combine. Corporate criminals who trash countless lives to add just one more dollar to their billions. They threaten, they bribe, they'll do anything to keep their crimes in the dark. But the people they've hurt are demanding justice. Their stories need to be told on America's Lawyer.
You know, it doesn't really matter where you've been. What matters is where you're going, right? Will future generations look back at the establishment media as the lead in the water pipes that drove the Romans mad? Do you find yourself watching TV to turn your brain off, to relax? I want you to watch TV to turn your brain on. I'm Rick Sanchez. It's time to do news again.
Welcome back. I'm still Lee Camp, and here's the rest of my interview with independent journalist Ann Garrison. But you've written about the U.S. hostilities a lot towards Ethiopia and Eritrea, and how they look kind of more and more like preceding U.S. wars in Yugoslavia, Libya, Syria. What specifically has the U.S. government been doing towards Ethiopia and Eritrea?
Well, it started with censure. Congress passed some kind of resolution censuring Ethiopia, saying that they were committing all these crimes in the Tigray province, and censure is always the first step at the UN Security Council as well. And then some sanctions followed. Sanctions on top leaders, not on the Ethiopian people yet, but we don't know what's coming. When this starts, there are various kinds of aggression pending. First it's censure, then it's likely to be sanctions, maybe international criminal court indictments, strangulation by the IMF and the World Bank, and then possibly outright military aggression, a proxy war like what we've had going in Syria, and maybe even U.S. bombing, as in Libya and Syria.
Yeah.
And people like you and I, and probably most of your audience, say, what can they possibly be talking about? How can anyone believe this? But I think a majority of Americans still believe there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So, I mean, Noam Chomsky and Edward S. Herman wrote about this in Manufacturing Consent. You throw so much bleep at the wall, see what sticks, and it will stick with the majority of the population who don't spend a lot of time digging through it like you and I do.
Very true. I think most Americans still believe that Russiagate found collusion between Russia and Trump. So these are sad times. I mean, and there's also been studies that have shown that if you just repeat something enough, people, the familiarity in their brain makes them think it's been found to be true just because it's familiar. So.
Yeah, exactly. And these big officials and the paper of record, the New York Times and the Washington Post and the BBC and Al Jazeera, they're all repeating it. So it must be true, right? Let me say something about Rwanda and Congo. This is another part of the world that I have made a lot of effort to understand. Another way you know that some kind of U.S. intervention is coming, whether it be, the censure of the sanctions, the international criminal indictments, proxy wars, or worse, is when they start talking about Rwanda. Rwanda is it's mentioned in Obama's directive on mass atrocities, and a writer, Maximilian Forte, in his book about Libya, said that for the humanitarian imperialist, everywhere is Rwanda. So as soon as they start saying, not since Rwanda have we seen such refugee flow, there's a genocide pending, we didn't get it right in Rwanda in 1994, so we have to do something now.
Yeah, that's. I think Samantha Powers made her whole career on that, right? Look at Rwanda,
exactly.
So we've got a bomb everywhere.
Exactly, and this is all based on a false narrative of what actually happened in Rwanda. The narrative you hear, and the one that's defended by countless edit alerts in the Wikipedia, is that demon Hutus suddenly developed a case of mass psychosis and killed 800,000 Tutsis. In Congo, in I think it was 2007 or 8, there was a study done that said 6 million people had died because of the war in the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, since I think it was 1997, and Rwanda and Uganda invaded Congo in 1996, and then again in 1998, overthrew the government, more or less installed a series of puppets. Rwanda always in the lead about this. And last time I checked, I think there were 4 million refugees, internally displaced persons in Congo. So it's as bad as Yemen, but you don't hear about it. You don't hear about it so much, and no one is screaming genocide, mass atrocities, crimes against humanity about Congo.
And of course, no matter what happened in Rwanda, the United States did not have a leg to stand on to be the ones that would intervene anywhere in the world. It'd be like, oh, there's atrocities going on over there. Let's send Hannibal Lecter to go deal with it because he's got a good record and, things are rough.
Exactly. Wait. No, there's a particular aspect of that story that should be understood, which is that there was a UN peacekeeping mission in Rwanda, and when the massacres began for the 3 months, April to June 1994, the U.S. was dominant on the UN Security Council at that time because Russia was a mess with Boris Yeltsin in power, and China wasn't being assertive enough to have disagreed. Clinton sent Madeleine Albright to the UN to make sure that they did not organize an intervention which would have been legal according to the UN Charter. Didn't organize an intervention, actively made sure there was none. UN peacekeepers were pulled out. Wow. And that was because the United States wanted to see their guy, Paul Kagame, the current president of Rwanda, seize power.
Right.
So so Bill Clinton's crocodile tears about how he didn't intervene in Rwanda, nothing could be funnier.
Yeah, great points.
He did intervene.
And we've run out of time, but I can't thank you enough for being here and for all your excellent journalism. So thanks so much.
Okay, and I recommend everybody find Ethiopia on a map.
And now to tell us about the Israeli spyware company that created a weapon used against journalists and activists around the globe, let's go to Naomi Caravani for the Weekly Offensive.
New leaks reveal that governments targeted journalists and dissidents using Israeli-made spyware. Indeed, this technology was intended to catch terrorists, a word that has no meaning now thanks to Israel. Even ice cream makers are terrorists to the state. After Ben & Jerry's banned the sale of ice cream in the occupied territories, the Israeli prime minister said that the maker of the frozen dessert will face serious consequences. It seems Israel issued a saturated fatwa, emphasis on the fat. It's been a tough week for Israel after this news came out. The Israel-based NSO group engineered the Trojan horse weapon they call Pegasus so that the phone hack is imperceptible to the target, yet can access nearly all of the information on the phone.
It can access every message you've ever sent. It can access every message you've ever received. It can access every photo, every video, every email. It can turn on your microphone. It can turn on the microphone even when you're not using a phone call and just record what you're doing in the room. It can turn on your camera.
In some cases, you can enter someone's number into the system and hack the phone in what are known as zero-click hacks. The system is so easy to use and to abuse, but don't worry, the NSO group only sells it to the most restrained members of the international community and American society, like the police. Turn your target smartphone into an intelligence gold mine, they told the LAPD and San Diego police departments. We all knew that a phone is a spy in your pocket, which, when you think about it, is really tragic for all the people who spent their lives training to be spies. I mean, imagine spending decades learning Urdu and Farsi and forgoing a family, only to have a phone take your job. I mean, what do I do with these Ray-Bans? What happens to this identity I've painstakingly fabricated? What happens to Johnny the Hawk? We already knew the insidious capability of the Israeli cybersecurity firm, the NSO group, but the scope of its use has been underestimated until these leaks. There were many journalists, some even from the New York Times, CNN, and AP on the list of targets. Not Fox News, though, which led to even greater outrage. Also on the list of potential targets were prime ministers, presidents, and a king. So it turns out the emperor has no phone, or if he does, another emperor is listening to him getting dressed. Ugh, I have nothing to wear to the dinner with the King of Siam. This is so embarrassing. It's disturbing that the editor of the Financial Times was a target of Saudi Arabia, but he won't suffer a fate like Jamal Khashoggi or the freelance Mexican reporter Cecilio Pineda-Berto, who was slain hours after he accused government officials of working with gangs. His phone number and his widow's phone number also showed up on the list. Mexico, indeed, has the largest amount of phone numbers on the leaked list of Pegasus targets. See, the NSO has a human rights policy, but they put as much effort into protecting human rights as they do into naming their company and product. It's like the NSA, but more integrity. How about NSO? It's Trojan horse technology, but we can't call it a Trojan horse. That would defeat the purpose. How about a different horse? Seabiscuit. No, Pegasus. Just another Greek myth. There's no shortage of coverage on the human rights violations and grisly murders that this hacking software was involved in. But the company and the country of Israel are not facing the same condemnations of cyber attacks from U.S. allies that say Chinese firms are for mere suspicions. Israel facilitating human rights violations through cyber attacks? It couldn't be. It must be China pretending to be Israel. They can shapeshift, you know. We know that the laboratory for creating this technology was the occupied territories and tested on the Palestinian population. So at its origins, it's a human rights violation. The NSO group has vehemently denied its associations with the killings of journalists. They say that they only offer the software to vetted government agencies. Sources familiar with the matter said Saudi Arabia was temporarily cut off from using Pegasus in 2018 for several months, following the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, but was allowed to begin using the spyware again in 2019 following the intervention of the Israeli government. Israel is definitely using Pegasus as a shadow tool of diplomacy, but Israel, the country, can distance itself from the company at the NSO group and say, it's a private company. It's capitalism, baby. While this tool is used to wage war on citizens in Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Rwanda, or Hungary. The NSO group claims it's on a life-saving mission, which is a little hard to argue when you're making something called a virus. Oh, I developed a way to save children. It's actually a type of gonorrhea, but it'll teach them never to have unprotected sex again. What is also getting buried in the reporting on Pegasus is the amount of money that successive American presidential administrations have earned working with the NSO group. We learned that the NSO repeatedly denied having had anything to do with the Khashoggi killing, but astonishing new evidence confirms his fiancée was surveilled, along with other allies. We also learned that the surveillance giant has failed to build a big business in the U.S., but an influential network of consultants, lawyers, and lobbyists still made money representing the company through its Saudi-caused PR crises and attempts to sell to the American market. From Obama to Trump through the Biden administration, American officials have profited from helping this Israeli company with its PR crises and have incentive to shield it from accountability. We're witnessing the abuse of this tool on a global scale, and this cyber weapon is being used against countries' own citizens. But the private cybersecurity firm will continue to escape scrutiny while the Israeli government helps arrange new strategic alliances with other repressive regimes. The NSO is likely a small fish in the big pond of surveillance firms and organizations like the NSA and CIA and the International Consortium of Five Eyes scraping data from wherever they can. You know what? What happened to the old days of dignified spying? Getting to know your target by digging through their trash. I mean, the physical kind. Go through some tampons, some Taco Bell wrappers. Have some dignity.
And that's the show. But join me on Twitter at Lee Camp and check out my book, Bullet Points and Punchlines. It's at leecampbook.com. Until next time, keep fighting.